All right, looks like we are alive on arrival. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Robert Phoenix. I am broadcasting to you live from the Hill Country, where the birds are doing a nice little dance on the window ledge in front of me. And got a great show lined up for you today. We're going to be joined by our friend Lark in Texas. He'll be here in the first hour. And Chad Steumke. Okay. Steve is going to be with us, but he's not feeling talkative today. Okay. All right. That's a good thing. I guess we got to know what our disciples are. But we know Steve is here, and he'll be patrolling Chatlandia, and we'll see him pop up here in a moment. Let's see. We got Emily Moyer. Emily and I had a great conversation pre-show, and looking forward to connecting with her next week to really break some very interesting stuff down, especially when it comes to the Unity Party, which we are diving in on, and sort of a deeper excavation of what's happening with Joe Rogan. And it's not pretty. The Joe Rogan situation is not pretty. There's Lils. What's going on? Marie Gilson. FUB 77. The Crimmies are here. What's going on, cuz? Sandra Wells, 10 Dragon 14. There she is, CM Christine Muse. I love your picture, Christine, by the way. Beth Berry is here. There's Ryan. We'll be seeing him soon. Let's see who else. There she is, Amy, Uncle Glenn, Natasha Lloyd. There's Joe Mama. What's going on, Joe? Been hearing really good things about you and your life. Keep on going. Keep on trucking, as Eddie Kendricks used to say. Myra Alexander's here. Victoria V. There is Dawn Hart. Yes, we hope our friend Maury is doing just fine. I know a lot of people have pitched in and helped out, and I hope he can stabilize and get his situation back on track. J.R. Williams. There's Steve. There's Faith. Robbie Chopra, reading from Chirac. Robbie, you can always get away and come down to the old getaway here down in Tejas for a weekend. 10 Dragon. I was wondering if Spotify was a trap. Spotify's one of the Chinese. Spotify has Chinese interests. Lark in Texas. Howdy from Big D. Lark, come on in, brother. I sent you the link. Check your email. Jump on in. There's Roxanne. Hey, Roxanne, good to see you. Kathy Steen, what is going on with South Dakota, Mitchell, South Dakota, and that just horrific boardroom meeting, school board meeting? I'm going to play some video from that, and Lark and I can talk about it. So, Lark, check your email. You got a link to jump on in. Let's see, what is it? Dies it really, Rob? What are you talking about? Rogan suit looks like a satanic bunker. Oh, yes. It is not good. It is not good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, not a good scene with Joe Rogan. I liked Emily's insight on Austin in her conversation with Danny. Yeah. So why don't I do this? Let me see if I can pull up a picture of Joe Rogan's set. Let's see if we can do this. Let's see if I can pull up a picture of his new set and Joe in the new set. Let's see. Here we go. Let's see if I can get this here. It's really bizarre the way the thing is set up. I'm trying to find some pictures, and there's a lot of haters out there. There are a lot of people that hate Joe Rogan. They hate Joe Rogan. They're jealous. They're jealous of Joe. And look, I'm not not a huge Joe Rogan fan. I don't hate him. I actually, at this point, feel very sorry for him. Let me show you this picture. And okay, so I'm going to blow it up here. See if I can get it bigger. Here we go. Let's see. Do a screen share. I think Rogan's good at MMA commentating. I think he's good too. I think he's in trouble though. I think he is in trouble. There's trouble in Dodge. So this is okay. This is the new studio, and it's a combination of magenta and pink. Here's Joe Rogan. He doesn't look like he's getting ready to fight the Cylons. It looks like he's getting ready to be quarantined in a padded cell, actually. And look, that might be Elvis on his pink t-shirt, but you can see kind of the pink highlight behind him, like the pink light behind him. And remember, the pink light is what kind of breaks Philip K. Dick's reality and sends him into this sort of state of reverie where he travels theoretically to the future. So this is the emasculation of Joe Rogan. This is what's taking place right now. I mean, prior to that, he had a set in LA. It was brick and mortar, right? He had the brick and mortar set. He had pictures of Jimi Hendrix and Elvis. I mean, these are iconic sort of characters. I think there was an American flag. I mean it was this kind of, Joe was this interesting character of hyper masculinity, but at the same time, approachable, everyday kind of guy with an interest in many different things. And now he's got a couple days growth. He's got the pink t-shirt. And I have to say that the set actually looks like the inside of vaginal walls. That's what it looks like. It looks like Joe is kind of in a womb now. Like this is a womb. Like they have completely feminized Joe Rogan. Completely feminized him. And it's not because he's wearing pink, but it's part of it. And it also has to do with sort of what's going on. Like if you go back and watch the movie Alien, I'll show you a clip from Alien. Let me see if Lark is in. Yeah, we got Lark. What's going on, Lark? Lark is I'm gonna bring Lark in 1 second. I'm gonna show you. You stop the share. I'm gonna show you the movie Alien, and so in the movie Alien, Tom Skerritt, even though the color scheme is different, Tom Skerritt would go into this place where, let's do the share here. Tom Skerritt would go into this place. He was Dallas. He was the captain of the Nostromo. And this was where he would get in touch with the intelligence of the Nostromo, and it was called Mother. And the whole idea was to create this womb-like setting for Tom Skerritt Dallas to connect with this kind of feminine intelligence, which was running the entire Nostromo. And even though the color scheme is different, right? I think they're doing the same thing in some ways. Like this was the safest place, all kind of padded and soft, and the rest of the ship was a Giger nightmare. So I think they're doing something similar with Rogan. That's my sense. All right, let's bring Lark in. Lark, you're in the house.
My goodness, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. But we don't have a visual on you though. Is that happening today?
Why not?
Okay. Let me see. You got the power. All you got to do is click on your camera
Aha.
option. Yeah.
That's how that works.
Yeah. There you are.
It would help if I take that tape off, right?
Well, yes. Yes. Now you're at risk. You should put a mask on.
I think so.
Your computer or something.
I probably will be more attracted to the ladies if I wear a mask.
Oh, come on now. I don't know about that. I mean, it depends on the setting, right? Depends on the set and the setting. And it depends on the mask too. Like maybe if you wore like a cowboy mask, like a kerchief cowboy mask.
Yeah, I really need to play up that Texas thing.
I think so. You got to get the hat, and then you get the mask, and now all of a sudden you're. And I think some mirrored sunglasses to update the look.
Yeah, I am very practiced in the art of using the word y'all. That's about as far as I ever really got.
I'll never forget go ahead.
No, I've learned to blend, in the rural areas if I need to be blended, and different strokes for different folks, as you know. So that's the way Texas is.
Well, I'm still learning the ropes here, and I've been here for since 2012. So I don't think I blend in very well because I don't wear a mask, and most every Texan I run across wears a mask, so I don't blend in all that well.
I spent an hour and a half, 2 hours last night talking to I don't know how many generation Texans. He lives in your neck of the woods there in Fredericksburg and Kerrville.
Right.
And I guess his family kind of owns around 5,000 acres in that area, of which he's got about 400 acres. He's a guy that went to university. I guess he went to University of Arkansas. And he knew a lot of the big shots surrounding the Clintons and those people.
By the way, the Clintons and the Bushes share a ranch in Ingram, not far from Kerrville, by the way.
Oh,
so, yeah. Keep going.
Not surprised, but
yeah.
Anyway, he's an interesting guy, and he's a great guy. He's probably, I'm going to guess, in his mid to late 50s. But that land was granted to them by the Spaniards. By Mexico.
So it goes back a ways.
Right. And I've also known in my life, he's since passed away, another gentleman who was in Young County, which is north of where I am, in Dallas, Tarrant County area, Dallas-Fort Worth. And he was an attorney. And he went to TCU, then he went to SMU, and then he clerked for a federal judge for a while. This guy knew everybody that was anybody in the state of Texas. And before he died, I had turned him on to communitarian law and showed him how to recognize it. And he would have been a terrific ally for all of us. But this poor man passed away with his boots on, in his sleep apparently, in the dead of winter, because he walked literally 7 miles to town just to get a part for his truck, even though people that own garages and people that owned car parts companies and all kinds of people owed him favors that would have happily delivered the part for him or even fixed it for free. And anyway, the poor guy was only like, I don't know, 52 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And he died in his sleep. And I didn't find out about it until 2 weeks after the fact. But this is a man that I had conversations for 2 and 3, 4 hours at a time. We were getting down to the nitty gritty of Texas law. And anyway, opportunities lost.
Well, I'll take the glass half full perspective on this one. Number one, he died with his boots on, right? So that's supposedly a sign of valor. Number two, he passed away in his sleep, which is probably one of the better ways to, exit stage left versus something a lot more violent or prolonged. But obviously, losing an ally in the sort of the ongoing war and conflict to establish a beachhead and gain people's awareness, well, that's significant. And, it reminds me a little bit of, I was looking back, I was trying to find the last best president. But the one president that looked like he might have been, kind of legit and actually been worthwhile to help people. And the guy that I came up with was actually Calvin Coolidge. And Coolidge was he was like Coolidge would not allow the U.S. to become part of the League of Nations. Like, he nixed that. And he was really, really good at bringing people together. And he was like, less government is better government. And he comes out of a very strong sort of working class upbringing on a farm in Vermont, and suffered a lot of tragedy when he was young. His sister dies, his mother dies. He's actually McKinley's vice president, and I think McKinley's poisoned as he's headed out to California on that train to go speak in San Francisco. And so he gets a term under McKinley, and then he wins the election, highest level of prosperity in the U.S. with Calvin Coolidge, the least amount of obvious influence of government. He is really very into balancing the budget. Like, we would call him kind of a true conservative, in some ways libertarian by today's standard. And then his son dies while he's in office, which is tragic. It ends, he finishes out his term, could have easily won his second term. And then he walks away from it. He was about as anti-New Deal as you could get. Like, he was an anathema for somebody like Roosevelt. And I think he's probably the outlier of kind of the last best U.S. president. And then I went through all the list of pretenders like Alf Landon and Thomas Dewey, and they all had globalist connections. So it didn't matter whether it was going to be Truman or Dewey. It didn't matter, right? Whoever was going to win, and they would be, moving this thing forward. And so any real opposition was no opposition at all. And it really kind of ends at Coolidge. So I don't know. I'm just bringing that up because it reminds me in some ways of the passing of your friend, perhaps a light, snuffed out too early in some ways.
Well, yeah, but, perspectives change over time. I don't have a high regard for a lot of the so-called presidents of the United States.
I don't either.
There's an article. It's not really an article. It's a page over at my new website, for which I provided a current link for you, by the way.
And your website, by the way, is in the description of the show. So for people
that's the old one. That's the old one. I haven't written there since 2013.
Okay, so I'll put the new one up when we're done, when we're finished.
Yeah, no problem. But anyway, it's for the listeners, that would be tinyurl.com/Lark In Texas. And that entry is entitled Patrick Henry on Stealing Their Liberty by Ambuscade. Ambuscade is spelled Ambuscade, a word that's rather fallen out of fashion today, but it simply means ambush. And the link I provided is to something called Corrupt Practices and Misuse of Power by the Presidents of the United States. And that's a woman in California named Bernadine Smith, who's probably in her 80s or 90s today. LibertyGunRights.org, Second Amendment Committee.org, I believe, are her websites that still exist. And she's one of these unsung heroes that are still with us today that very few people talk about, but old timers, people that have been on the net for 15 or 20 years, they're going to recognize the name. And another woman is a woman that lives in Chico, California, and she's still alive. And she was involved with Joan Vion, if you remember the late Joan Vion.
Yeah.
Women's International Group.
Mm-hmm.
And she's written something that you can find on the internet. It's simply entitled Masters of Seduction. And that was back in 1998, 1999. And her name is Jerry Lynn Ball. Jerry Lynn Ball, Masters of Seduction. That's worth reading.
Okay.
And by the way, the person that I stumbled on when I first got on the internet, of course, was Nikki Rapana.
Right.
And her website.
Who's making a significant resurgence, by the way.
I hope so, because, I mean, I've been trying to talk about it for more than 10 years. Mm-hmm. And she has for more than 15 years, going on 20.
Yeah, Brendan O'Connell was touting her on one of his latest videos.
Yeah, you're going to see more and more people talking about it. But, it's really saddening. It's me that after all these years, people that are very bright, very sophisticated in the ways of the internet, they don't think this is worth talking about. It's truly saddened me at times. Nikki Rapana wrote something prior to 9/11. It was called Understanding the Third Way. Mm-hmm. And, people that want to look at the significance of this word communitarianism and its correlation to communitarian law and want to know why it's significant to even know about these things, they should look at something called Cry Our Beloved America, Sliding Down the Communitarian Slope. Indeed, it was called the Third Way back in the 90s, even the 80s, by people in academia, etc. But it says in that article, again, Cry Our Beloved America, Sliding Down the Communitarian Slope. And this is by a woman in Norway, Crossroad Ministries. She said, it's not quite capitalism and it's not quite communism. It's communitarianism, the third way. And it explains why. These things are easily searchable online. We even have politicians admitting that they're communitarians today, and yet we have no discussion whatsoever in the alternative media. It is really a sad commentary on our time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so I think what we have here is it's Hegelian dialectic, right? The problem is capitalism. That's the problem. It's corporations. It's unchecked, power grabs, unchecked demonstration of power for the acquisition of resources, disparate distribution of economy, right? That's a problem. The solution, the reaction is communism, right? The reaction is communism. We're going to take everything. The state will own everything, and it will be redistributed evenly, right? And so, but that's the reaction to the problem. of capitalism because they believe capitalism is the ill of all things, right? The solution now becomes exactly what you're talking about, which is this idea of communitarianism. So it is the end game of this Hegelian dialectic.
Well, bear in mind that some people will turn that around and they'll say, well, the problem is communism and the reaction is capitalism. Either way, what happens in such a scenario is that we become techno slaves. Because as I point out, the overarching agenda, the overarching global to local, globalized, communitarian / technocratic agenda is really twofold. One is depopulation, and the other is techno-slavery.
Yeah.
So you have to actually, as an individual, no matter what your station in life, no matter where you are, your experience, your age, what have you, you have to ask yourself, well, what kind of life do you want?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so what you need to know is what kind of life does somebody else, the so-called community, have in mind for you? And so the idea of knowing about this information is so that you can plot your own course. If you don't know what the enemy's up to, and you don't know anything about the enemy, and you don't know what you're fighting against, then how can you ever expect to prevail against this enemy? This is right out of Sun Tzu's Art and War, the Art of War.
Yeah.
You have to know yourself, and you have to know the lay of the land. You have to know the ecological lay of the land, to be able to navigate this thing called life.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you know about communitarianism, I'm sorry, you really don't know what is going on at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my attitude anymore. And don't worry, sooner or later, more and more people are going to be talking about it. But you know what? We're 25, 30 years behind the A-ball here.
Right. And so one of the things that I think is, it's not a challenge, but I think the barrier or the threshold to embracing the ideology has to do with the nomenclature, right? I mean, so when you say communitarianism, people will interpret that in a kind of a broad way, and it sounds benign, right? It sounds benign, and so the first reaction to the individual, just at a kind of visceral, reactive level, will say, "Well, gee, that doesn't sound that bad to me." Communitarianism. Why should I, spend a lot of time and energy and effort into something that actually sounds, remotely positive or forward thinking? And so I feel like that the nomenclature has to be rebranded, right? And it's important to understand communitarianism, but if you want to get people's attention, I think it's got to be rebranded, and it has to be directed in a way that it gets people's attention.
Well, maybe you and some other smart guys can help me figure out how to do that, because I've been looking for some allies for a number of years. I'm not a techie. I had to learn the other day that this thing called a modem and a router, which I thought were two different things, were actually one of the things, one and the same. Mm. I still don't know the difference between a file and a folder, and I still don't know what the hell an app is. I mean, I'm an old guy. I don't give a damn about this technology. There are many days I wish it didn't exist and I wasn't attached to it.
Right.
But it's going to be our undoing, this technology. Because we love our toys so much, and we don't mind being surveilled and having our privacy violated. I mean, this is unbelievable development in our lifetimes. You and I are old enough to remember when we didn't have such a thing as the internet. And yet people today that are under the age of 30 and 40, they've never known anything but being connected to the internet.
Yeah, we've been having these discussions frequently. Your pre-internet world versus post-internet world, very, very different worlds, very different societies, creating very different people.
Well, we're not going to even have access to the courts to adjudicate disputes.
Oh, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
So we also have to remember that that or he which wields the power of the purse also wields the power of the sword.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we have as individuals, as free-thinking individuals, blithely given up. We have acceded authority to that entity which controls and wields the power of the purse. And at the same time, they wield the power of the sword. Because, see, if you got enough money, you can buy anybody. You can buy anybody off.
Absolutely.
A scientist can be bought off just as easily as a politician. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I've got news for the listeners out there. You know, whatever your visceral reaction to characters, personages like Hillary and Bill Clinton or the Bushes, guess what? They all describe themselves as communitarians. The Pope is a communitarian.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, why aren't we talking about this thing called communitarianism? What the hell's wrong?
Because I think it needs to be rebranded. When you say communitarian, I believe that people will ingest that and have this idea that it may not be a bad thing or wrong. I could be completely wrong, but I think it needs to be rebranded so people can wake up and smell the coffee. And so I would, you know,
why don't we call it totalitarianism then? How about technological slavery?
I think techno-feudalism is a really good phrase, like techno-feudalism, to reduce everybody back into a feudal state ruled by technology and systems management. You know, I think techno-feudalism gets people kind of more in alignment. We should be talking about techno-feudalism, and techno-feudalism is a process that evolves out of communitarianism. And they could be one and the same. I just feel like it needs to be rebranded so that when people hear it, it's like, oh, I got to pay attention to this.
Well, I think you make a good case, and other people around me over the years have made similar cases. You know, you can do a search online and you can get a feel for exactly what you just said. It's called communitarianism, first things first. Do a search. It's very easy. Communitarianism, first things first. And once you've digested that, then do a search for something called Lark on communitarianism. If you want to read Nikki's book, the 2012 revised edition, do a search. The Definitive Anti-Communitarian Manifesto. These keyword searches will bring you to where you want to be on the first page. And at my own website, you can see something with an asterisk in front of it. The entry is entitled On Communitarianism, Collected Musings, April 2020. I challenge anybody to read these things, spend just a tiny bit of time, and ask yourself, do I need to know about these things or not? No matter what we call them. Remember, you know, my interest more and more today is language and the communication arts. You know, the truth of the matter is, when we look at the Common Core curriculum today, which is how they're introducing communitarianism in the public schools, because now we have a cradle-to-grave system. It starts as a P20 system, so-called. That's preschool through graduate school. People are being socially engineered left and right from the moment they're born, and no one can deny that they have not been socially engineered in this world. Mm-hmm. But we need to know what the smart guys have in mind for us. Well, that we never bought into and we never signed on to.
Right. Well, the communitarian model has changed and morphed and mutated. Now you have critical race theory and intersectionality being introduced. So the communitarian ideal now is the village, right? It is the village, and it takes a village to raise a person, and families are bad. Your parents are bad, right? The idea of family and parents are bad. This is now being introduced into school systems around the United States. So now we have a new wrinkle being introduced to the idea of communitarianism. They're bringing it down into kind of the micro model or the micro world, which is the village. And they're essentially basing this on the idea of a village, a wonderful, harmonious, it's a small world after all, kind of village in Africa. That's what they're basing it on, right? That's what they're basing it on. And in order to get there, you have to reject the principles and values of your former family and your former life. So they're morphing this idea of what communitarianism is, because now it is becoming sort of socioeconomically and even to some extent racially exclusive.
Well, that African word, in case you're interested, is called Ubuntu. Mm-hmm. There's actually an Ubuntu party in South Africa today. The word is spelled U, B as in boy, U, N as in Nancy, T as in Tom, U as in university.
Yeah, I've interviewed Michael Tellinger a couple of times, by the way. Yeah.
But yeah, this is being rolled out all over the world. In a world of instant communication, internet instant communication, I should say. It's easy to see how these ideas have been able to spread far and wide. I mean, Nikki was reporting back in Seattle in the late 90s, early 2000s, before she moved back to Alaska with her daughter and her children, that she would be visiting the local politicos, and they would see Amitai Etzione's books on their bookshelves. I mean, Alan Sabrowski, the former research director at the Army War College, was actually teaching from a textbook as part of the curriculum that was written by Amitai Etzioni, who's called the everything expert. Americans aren't talking about this guy? I mean, he's called the everything expert, but his son, Oren Etzioni, at the Paul Allen Institute, attached to the University of Washington, is called the world's foremost authority on artificial intelligence. So I have to ask you, if you're a big shot techie today, right out of school with your computer science degree, and you're knocking down $60,000 to $120,000 a year, and you work for Microsoft or Google, for Apple, I have to ask you, are you a capitalist or are you a communist? Are you a good guy or a bad guy?
Yeah. So again, I think it's all about context, right? So if you are taking so I used to live in Seattle a long time ago.
So did I.
And I was there when Microsoft was just getting rolling. So I was there in 1989, 1990. I had a buddy, Paul, who worked for Microsoft and he was making a lot of money, a lot of stinking money. And he had a very cool pad, right? And so I'd hang out with him and we'd watch movies on his big screen projection stuff. But Paul was a different character from a different person from a different time, and raised in a completely different sort of political and cultural milieu. So the kids or the people who are making, let's say, 100K now, working for Microsoft or big tech, they're not raised in the same way. They don't have the same values. They don't have the same kinds of, unusual cultural ciphers of actually rebelling, right? Like being a rebel at one point in time when you were a youth, which was all part of programming, by the way, was something that people would do. I don't want to be a part of the mainstream. I don't want to be part of the status quo. I've read Jack Kerouac, right? I want to do something different. And so that's kind of ingrained in my consciousness, and for better or worse. But that's not how kids are raised these days. They don't have any of that. And if their idea of rebelling is moved or contorted or sculpted, it's going to be rebelling in a way that is much more controlled, that they believe that wearing a mask and following science and all these things that people just step in line with, that's how they rebel, right? So I think when you ask that question, I don't even think they have the ground or the foundation to even answer that question. I don't. I think that they're completely molded and programmed, and maybe at some point they'll break out of that mold and program.
I'll tell you something, Robert. When I was a young man and I was just starting out, going to college, trying to figure out which way I want to go in this world, I finally decided it was down to, do I want to be a soil scientist or do I want to be a famous chef?
Right. Yeah. We had this conversation. Keep going.
Well, I decided that, well, the idea of getting my fingernails dirty and digging around in the dirt and sweating out there by myself wasn't exactly exciting or glamorous. But the idea of learning how to cook and, getting other people around you to be excited about what they were doing and to bring people to communion at the table,
Mhm.
if you will, to improve the species by improving the diet.
Mhm.
These kind of things were actually rather important in a modern world. And so that's the path I selected. I finally had to get out of that business in 1994. And I had reached several milestones along the way. I got a lot of press. I was making pretty decent money. I busted my ass. I was working 80 to 100 hours a week typically. And I was right on this cusp of being able to, shall we say, make it.
Mhm.
But something had been bothering me my entire career since I was a teenager. I didn't like the idea of poisoning my customers, my neighbors, and my friends because I was hip to the food,
Right.
the quality of the provender coming through the back door.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally had to admit that I could not beat the system. I could not escape from being an actual participant in organized crime because that's what it is. That's part of the depopulation agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Big ag, big media, big tech. All of this stuff is dirty.
Mm-hmm.
It's corrupted. It's compromised. Big pharma. There's something wrong with our world.
Mm-hmm. Well, absolutely.
And we're being depopulated. We're being genocided as a people in a myriad numbers of ways.
Where do you weigh in on the religious question? Like, are you somebody that has faith? Do you believe in God? Do you believe that there is a spirit that is redemptive, no matter what happens to us? Because that's an option for a lot of other people, right? Where are you on that?
Well, let's put it this way. First, I'll say that I'm not going to call myself a Christian because I've been damn mad at the Christians for a very long time. Mm-hmm. Because they have acquiesced to the whims of Satan at every turn.
We're on the same page with that.
I mean, Christian Zionism down here in Texas makes me ashamed to be even called an American. In fact, I don't like labels at all. I wouldn't call myself a religionist in any sense like that. I mean, I would no more want to have Jews running the world than the damn Methodist or the Baptist or the Mormons.
Mm-hmm. Amen to that. Amen to that, brother.
So, I mean, I like the idea of America, but I'm ashamed to call myself an American anymore. I'm just ashamed. And that's why
it's difficult. It's a very difficult thing. But I think something that we have to, something we have to reconcile. Really, I think we have to reconcile that in our own way, and that is hard work to do that.
Well, let's put it this way. I think there's a difference between faith and belief. I am a student of comparative religions and have been all my life. Mm-hmm. Obviously, when I think of religion, I think really religio philosophy. Mm-hmm. And when you look at people like Harold Berman, and anybody that studies communitarianism needs to know about Harold Berman, because Harold Berman, the late Harold Berman, taught American law students the law for 40 years at Harvard and 20 years more at Emory University in Atlanta. He was, in his lifetime, a noted Soviet legal expert. So you have to ask yourself, why is a Soviet legal expert teaching Ivy League law students and for 40 years?
Right. Exactly.
We have to ask how it is that the late Justice Antonin Scalia found himself on the faculty at the Institute of American and Talmudic Law. Mm-hmm. And so we have to ask ourselves, too, what the hell is the law today? I mean, are we talking biblical law, spiritual law, environmental law? What kind of law?
Noahide law?
Oh, yeah. I mean, law of the land, law of the sea, admiralty law, maritime law. There must be 1,000 different types of law.
Yeah, right.
Which is why I finally got pissed off after over several years. And I said, you know what? I'm going to invent my own damn law.
Oh, cool.
I'm going to give it my name,
Right.
because everything else is just confusing to me.
Yeah.
And you're going to find what I'm talking about if you visit a entry at my website simply called 9 words. The 9 words. And I challenge anybody listening to go there and ask yourself, if you really want solutions to uh, this miasma, this black goo, which is attached to yourself in your life, ask yourself if there's not a way that we can wind our way away from this puzzlement and find a path and plot a course for ourselves. Because right now, all of us are on a primrose path leading to, frankly, troubled waters.
Yeah, I agree.
As far as I'm concerned, as long as we're not talking about the problem, the elephant in the room, we are talking about nothing.
Well, I think
we're just amusing ourselves.
I think we can address the elephant in the room, absolutely, and then we need to address what we do and how we asymmetrically disassemble the elephant in the room. This is, I think, the two-pronged approach, which is awareness, and then which is essential, and then there's some kind of deployment and application, because there are people who have a lot of awareness, and they can quote you chapter and verse, and maybe not as well as you could, but they can connect a lot of dots. But what good is connecting the dots unless we are actually doing something? And when I say do something, I'm just talking about breaking your programming. Just break your programming. Well, I want to play video here really quickly. And this happened a couple of days ago at a school district in Mitchell, South Dakota. Have you seen this video, by the way?
I'm not sure. Maybe not.
I'm going to play this for you right now. Okay. Now, here is somebody. Now, remember, this is in South Dakota. It is Mitchell, South Dakota. It is a very small town. They're meeting with the school board, right? This is the people that are making the decisions on a local level for the school. And one guy decides that he is going to break the programming. Okay.
I did see that. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna play it for everybody, and you need to pay attention. And there are a few things in this video that I think are important. I've watched this at least a dozen times now. So I've broken it down, and there are 3 things in the video that I really want to point out here and Lark, I'd love to hear commentary when we're done. So let's cue this thing up. It's right here. Okay. So here's the set. This guy is his name is a doctor. I think last name is Davis. I actually tried to call his office this morning. Believe it or not, all the phone numbers of the school board are listed. Okay. They're all there. If you want to, you can call these people and you can talk to them and you can ask them why they allowed this travesty to happen. All right, let's go.
As of right now, they want to do it. Here, I really don't want it. I know you don't want to do it. I know you do not want to do it. Yep. I know this guy doesn't want to do it, but unfortunately, you have to follow these school rules, right? If it's part of their policy that we have to so force me out. You're going to make, yes, you're going to have to drag me out. At that point, this is what you are doing. At that point, you are showing discord within our communities at every level. It's disgusting. Do you harass your client when they're at your restaurant to put on masks? Do you harass them? Sure. We're not going to do you? At this point, you could be facing additional charges. Of what? I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. You're gonna have to drag me out. You know that, right? No, you're a little.
This is an embarrassment to our school.
Don't do it, man.
Read your time.
Relax. It ain't worth all of that, brother. Come on,
Okay, you hear a voice, and he says, "It ain't worth all of that, brother." Okay, now, who is he directing that to? Is it directed towards him, or is it directed towards the cops? It ain't worth all of that, brother.
Yeah.
All right?
Good
All
point.
right, let's keep going.
Please don't.
And then he says, "Please help." He says, "Please help." He's putting out an SOS to the rest of these people. Okay? This is the superintendent of the school district. Here we go.
Don't resist. Don't resist. Don't resist.
Oh, and here's listen to what the woman says.
Don't resist. Please. Please.
Let go of it. You have to change me in front of all these people. I really don't want to be.
Don't
I
change
know
him. Please
you
don't.
what I want these people to deal with while they're cops of minority descent have to do this to everybody. Constantly putting you people in these positions.
He just wants to have a say in what's going on. Well, we did it.
Okay, so you know what? This is interesting. What happens is they wind up taking him out, right? They wind up taking him out, and they cut this thing short. But look, I just look at these people are sitting around and they are doing nothing. Nothing. They should be rallying to this man's defense. But they are completely in a state of mind control with the damn mask. This is the only person who has any temerity or she has any gumption here, no temerity. She's jumped in, right? She has jumped in. By the way, this guy is, his name is Reed Bender, and he normally attends these school board meetings. And he's been bringing this up consistently. And this turd, look, he's got his wipes and everything. This guy, I don't even want to get into him. But he was the one that left the library, used his cell phone, and he called the cops in. Okay? So the community, which should be supporting him, basically lays down. Why? Because they've been conditioned and mind controlled to do nothing. Nothing.
Let me get my 2 cents in here, Robert.
Sure.
Number one, it doesn't make good sense to consort with zombies and criminals. A zombie is simply a person that is not in full control of their own mind. And a criminal is someone that's very often involved in organized crime or criminal activity, and they don't even know it because they serve large collectivist entities and they give in to the diktats of the leadership of the group. Number one, to the gentleman that's at the school board meeting, the first question I would ask is, why in the hell do you have your children in the public schools?
Great question.
And why are you even in the same room with these idiots?
Great question.
And there I would take it from there. There's something amiss here. And that's how I would begin. Why are you consorting with zombies and criminals? You can tell these people are out of their minds, wearing these stupid masks, and haven't you gotten the memo that it's not a good idea to have your children get brainwashed in the public schools today?
So these are great points, right? And maybe he should have explored those avenues and their options, or perhaps he has a quaint notion that as a parent who actually pays taxes that go to the school, right, then perhaps he should have some level of representation for his child's education.
And I got news. I got news for your listeners. You have no representation today in the government.
We understand that. We get that. We understand that. In his mind, He has not made that connection, but he's still being taxed for his kids, and he will be taxed whether he sends his kids to a public school or not.
People ask me all the time, well, don't you support the school teachers and the public schools? Because I live in suburbia. You know, my next door neighbor teaches mathematics at a high school. You know, and I talk to her every other day. She gardens like I do. But she knows how I think about the schools and property taxes that pay for the schools. No, I don't support the schools. I don't support the teachers. I don't support the troops. And I don't give a damn about Hollywood, and I don't watch their trash. I don't consume their filth, you know. And I'm just damn mad at myself that I'm even connected to this thing called the internet, because you know what? It's going to take down the whole world with us, you know. And it's not just information technology. It's the green technologies, especially genetics, robotics, information, and nanotech. And Americans love innovation. They just love it. They're being pushed. It's a buzzword. Go, go, go. More, more, more. And we're headed towards a transhuman future. The way these techies today, these tech crazies, as I term them, are today, if it moves, fit it with a chip. Now, isn't that better? No, it's not.
No. What's interesting about what you're saying is that when you drill down and look at the World Economic Forum and the Fourth Industrial Revolution, right, and the Great Reset, and when you look at Project Lockstep with the Rockefellers, one of the things they talk about is they talk about a reduction in innovation. That's a very interesting concept, because essentially what they're saying is we are going to ratchet down the individual's ability to innovate. Okay. And innovate doesn't always have to be involved with technology. Innovation could be along the lines of machinery or making something a little more efficient or useful, right? They're basically saying this is not going to happen. And if there's going to be any innovation, they'll be in control of the innovation. They'll be in control of that, right?
Oh, yeah. Now the new buzzword is biosecurity.
No.
Biosecurity. There's another new one, you know, but I hear what you're saying about that. I mean, let me tell you something. When I hear these smart people get together, I mean, do a search on YouTube, the Constitution in 2020. Just look at these people. I mean, we're talking criminals again.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was at one of these World Economic Forum conferences looking around the world, you know, I'd be like that guy in Scarface, you know. Look at these people, these mummies, you know. Remember the scene from Scarface?
Yeah.
He's in a high-end Tony restaurant. He's looking around at these people that, you know, they're part of the glam set.
Right.
You know, but I don't know. I mean, this world has gone weird. But the reality is that many of us are involved in organized crime and do not even realize it. I realized it in 1994. I gave up my life's dream. Mm-hmm. My purpose in life was optimal diet. That was my goal. I wanted to see it propounded and understood as being essential if we wanted to live a good life. Okay, that was what I was all about. I gave it up because I was poisoning people and I could not escape the economic business model of the time. Mm-hmm. I had to give up a business that I had for 12 years because it was a classic bricks and mortars company. Mm-hmm. 35,000 square foot building, 12 employees. You know, I had the largest inventory in 5 states. I was competing with people on the internet who had no inventory and only 1 or 2 tech-driven employees. And they were getting better deals from the manufacturers, especially in Asia, mm-hmm. more so than myself. Even though I'd been in business for better than 10 years, I had to compete with these people mm-hmm. because for some reason, they just appeared to be huge, you know, like Amazon mm-hmm. or Microsoft, because they had an internet presence, you know. So there is something wrong. This is something that wasn't true in our lives, Robert, when we were young. This is the one thing that has changed, that's made a dramatic impact on all of our lives. And don't you think it's interesting that a lot of this Agenda 21 crap was rolled out in the early into the mid 90s, right about the time of the popularization of the personal computer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This was timed perfectly.
Yeah.
It was timed perfectly. We love our enslavement.
Right. Right. And there's the first Apple commercial, which was, the first Apple was priced at $666.
I remember. Right? Yeah.
And then
how quaint was that?
And then they have the sort of the Orwellian kind of dystopic message, and the one person that can break out of that is the person that has the knowledge, and then the knowledge obviously comes with the computer with the $666 price tag. I will say this slightly in defense of the internet, and that I would not be able to do the work that I do today without the internet. And
the whole world is this way, Robert. I mean, nobody can conceive of being in any kind of business whatsoever without a digital calling card.
Well, when I say the work that I do, I have global clients, and it's allowed me to reach people in ways that I could not have reached them before. I could have reached people maybe on a local level, and that's fine, right? It's fine. I really don't do any local business because I live in an area where, quite frankly, what I do isn't really looked highly upon. I live in an area that is predominantly Christian, and what I do is in many circles considered to be anti-Christian.
Oh, indeed. I know what you're saying.
When I work with the internet, I know I'm doing a deal, right? I know that. And the thing is that I'm going to do the best that I can for as long as I can. I do a show 6 days a week, and I broadcast material that is not mainstream material. I've had shows that YouTube has taken down. I've had community complaints, and I don't really give a fuck. I'm going to do it until the lights go out. All right. That's the way it is. So I'm making this deal, and I'm going to use it to the best of my ability. And when it's over, it's over. When the party's over, turn out the lights. And by that time, I'll be on to something else. And I'm going to have to bring Chad on, but I really want to ask you this question. We understand that there is this communitarian agenda. We understand to the best of our ability, perhaps not as broad and deep and wide as you do. You've made this your mission in life. At the end of the day, the individual will not be able to survive what's coming. We will not be able to survive alone. So we have to figure out our own relationship with the group and with the community, right? This is the big missing piece, because we in the West have been bred to be individuals, and I'm cool with that. But now we're at a time where people like you and myself and others are going to have to figure out how we're going to redefine or bond together so that we can cohabitate in a period that is going to be socially turbulent. And that has nothing to do with communitarianism. It has more to do with our own survival and helping each other get through this together. What are your thoughts on that? And where do you land in that equation?
Well, look, I'm a big proponent of the golden rule. And there's nothing you've said that I don't agree with in that sense. The only thing that I advocate for is that people understand the world in which they inhabit so that they can make better choices. Mm-hmm. Because when we lose the ability to exercise free will, it's over. Mm-hmm. See, slavery is actually a word that's in the dictionary. It's been around for a long time. It exists. And we have to ask ourselves if we're down with that. Do we want to be slaves or what? I recommend everybody read Technological Slavery, or just do a search on YouTube, Technological Slavery. The bottom line is that we have to have the ability to make informed choices about this life. And when you realize that everything and everybody around you is turned against you in a lot of ways, we have to be recognized. We have to be cognizant of the fact that we're traversing a minefield, and that in turn that also includes our interpersonal relationships with other people.
Yep.
And so we're going to have to develop within ourselves a kind of a code book or a code of ethics, if you will. How it is that we roll. We have to know what our boundaries are. And we have to realize that, yeah, there's a lot of things that we all accept to be true. But in a communitarian world, a lot of these decisions are removed from your hands and your mind altogether.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was just talking with Emily, and we've been following the Weinstein brothers. Do you know Brett and Eric Weinstein and the new Dark Intellectual Web and all those characters? Are you familiar with them?
Somewhat, yes.
Yeah. So they've got this new thing they're starting called the Unity Party, right? This is the, their kind of new libertarianism, and based on kind of rational thought and stuff like that. And there was really interesting. They were having this kind of forum, and this one person asked a question and said, how is this going to work as a process? Is this a process that's going to be open to debate and discussion? And they came back with, this is what Emily told me, it will be based on dialectic. So it was like, oh, that's interesting. So you're not going to be open to discussing things. And really what they want to do is they want to create a system and a process that's based on consensus, right? It's a consensus-based process, which is terrible. I've seen consensus in action. And at some point it becomes psychological coercion and torture.
It's just sort of like you're living in a crash pad back in the 60s and you're the only one with a job.
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, when you really see consensus in action, and I have, and you get a group of people together, and there are two people that are holdouts because they don't agree with it, you watch what happens. You watch the psychological pressure that's applied to those two people. It's terrible. Terrible. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in some kind of weird Stanford prison experiment, right? That's modeled after, Delphi or something like that. But
well, if you don't know about communitarianism, when you employ the dialectic, because we do anyway, whether this thing called the Hegelian dialectic is not just an external phenomenon, it's an internal phenomenon as well. If you don't know about what the end game is and what this ultimate third way is and what this communitarian agenda undergirded by communitarian law is, then you can easily be beguiled and fancy danced down that primrose path.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a reality, and that's a fact. And that's why I say, again, it's a damn shame that more of us are not talking about it, because it's really not complicated. The information is out there, and a lot of us really, we have the same values. We have, we share the same morals and the same ethics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
right, absolutely,
this is a complicated organism, and we have to kind of have our own code book, our own source book, so that we can come to center whenever we are able, or when we want to, I should say. We have to have some boundaries. As far as I'm concerned, anybody that would have me as part of any kind of a formal group is not a group that I want to be a part of.
What about an informal group?
Informal's all right.
Okay.
I kind of like people. I like folks. I don't hate anybody, but I tell you one thing, I don't like being told what to think, and therefore I'm not qualified to tell anybody else how to think.
Mm-hmm.
But when somebody forces something on me and it's against my better judgment, Katie, bar the door.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the world we're entering into. A lot of people are going to be, it's sort of like that title, Cry Our Beloved America, sliding down the communitarian slope. Remember those 3 C's. Remember the 9 words. I'll put a link in the chat here in a minute. Are you compliant? Are you complacent? Are you complicit? Well, if you're one, you're probably all 3. Just like those people wearing the mask.
Yeah.
See, they just want to be agreeable. They want to go along to get along.
Right. And they think that if they do it, and it'll be over, and they'll just, they'll take one for the team, and I'm not gonna, draw any attention to myself, right? Yeah. Well, slippery slope.
And remember today that in a communitarian world, science fraud is rife.
Yeah.
It is rampant.
Yeah.
So don't put your faith in science. I mean, if you're looking for truth, you know, you need to traverse your own path.
Mm-hmm.
You need to blaze your own, you know, start at my website, become familiarized with the term and the language and the lingo. Re-listen to what we've talked about today and start your own investigation. Only you can decide if these words are important to you or not. They're a whole lot more than just words. They're a whole lot more than just things. Okay? And so we're going to have to wrap our minds around it. And I tell people too, when they look at, for example, the entry entitled Lark on Communitarianism, when you read all those different isms and your mind starts going wobbly, things start looking fuzzy, you know, after you've determined that you have a quick grasp of kind of what the word means, recognizing that every single one of these ism words, you can ascribe a million other words to.
Right.
You have to ask yourself, does this impact upon my life? Yes or no? If it does, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Just move on.
Mm-hmm.
Make your own list.
Right.
I've been at this for 16 years. I haven't seen any reason to amend or bridge that list in 5 years. Every single one of those other is, which comprise the so-called all-encompassing school of thought or ism, are listed. Lark on Communitarianism. And then, you know, I like to leave people with this, you know. I mean, this is from Rabbi Hillel, like 30 AD. He said words which were very much akin to the golden rule. I can't even think of it. I'm losing my train of thought here. He said, what is hateful to thee, do not unto your fellow man. This is the whole of the law. The rest is but commentary.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm told you 1 second. I'm just having to check on our second guest.
Sure, no problem.
Just let me just take care of that. So Steve, if you can check your text, you can see if Chad is synced up with the time. I think that's a great place to end, and I'd love to have you back on. The last time we talked, it was all pre-coronavirus and pre George Floyd, like that. I mean, we talked during another time, right? It was during a different time in a different social set, and here we are. We're having another discussion during this time, and I guarantee you, we're going to be hit with new wrinkles, new permutations, new vectors and factors to the social experiment, and I'm hoping that you and I can talk again during that time as well. You're welcome here anytime, Lark.
Well, thank you. Let's, you know, I enjoy the conversations always. You know, I just retired last year. I'm hardly in a position to be able to support myself. However, I've already spent 16 years researching this stuff. So to the extent that we can pass on some of this information to other people, and particularly to young people, I think it can only be beneficial.
Has to be. Has to be.
I'm going to put another quote in here from Aldous Huxley in your chat. But as it turns out, it's 739 words. What if I read it to you real quick before we end the show?
Do it.
Allow me 1 second. This is a quote from Aldous Huxley. The real hopeless victims of mental illness are to be found among those who appear to be most normal.
Mm.
Many of them are normal because they are so well adjusted to our mode of existence, because their human voice has been silenced so early in their lives that they do not even struggle or suffer or develop symptoms as the neurotic does. They are normal not in what may be called the absolute sense of the word. They are normal only in relation to a profoundly abnormal society. Their perfect adjustment to that abnormal society is a measure of their mental sickness. These millions of abnormally normal people living without fuss in a society to which, if they were fully human beings, they ought not to be adjusted. This is a very apropos quote for today.
Yep, absolutely. And Aldous Huxley, one of the designers of the future we're currently living in as well. Lark, it's been a real pleasure, and keep your spirit strong, and we'll get you back on here, and we'll take another dive. And maybe next time we do this, we can play a few more videos and do a little bit more commentary and, get your insight on some of this stuff as well. So thanks again. I appreciate it.
Well, I want you to know I enjoy your channel, and I enjoy you and all your listeners, and thank you for the invitation.
You're more than welcome. All right. I'll have links for everybody for Lark in Texas, and we'll put all the proper links on his website. If there's anything else you want me to put in there, go ahead and send me an email, and I'll put it in the description of the show, okay?
You got it.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Okay, there we go. Lark in Texas. And you can tell that he's an individual who is troubled. And not troubled in the sense that you see somebody who is a troubled person who is in like you don't want to be around a troubled person. They have issues. But you can tell he's deeply troubled with the way things are evolving in this world that we're living in. I could feel the weight and the burden on his shoulders, and almost a sense of, I wouldn't say desperation, but exasperation, right? And this is the challenge of people who do work, hard work, good work for a long period of time, and have been doing everything in their power to bring a message or bring information to people. And it is a thankless task in a lot of ways, a very thankless task. And it's a task that takes a toll on the human spirit and on people's emotions. And yet the real humans amongst us are obligated in some ways to do this, because to not do it would be to submit and become normal. In the words of Aldous Huxley, which is what Lark was talking about. So, if enough of us take those steps and live in ways that are theoretically abnormal, right? If we can break the patterning, if we can break the cage, if we can step outside of it, do something different, and it doesn't take much. It really doesn't take much. All you have to do is really look at your idiosyncrasies, your tendencies, your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, your patterns, your habituation. You change those things. Those are minor things. You change those things, and you can have a change on the rest of the world, because you will not be conditioned. You will be in a place where conditioning, it will take a lot more conditioning to get to you, right? And at some point, you're untouchable. You're going to keep coming back to the two culprits, guilt and shame. Guilt and shame. If you can master guilt and shame, your path to freedom is much more accessible than not. And I've brought this up before. Why do you think they have the cremation of care ceremonies? Why do you think they have those ceremonies, or variants of those ceremonies? Because what they want to do is they want to murder people's relationship with guilt and shame, but for different reasons, right? For different reasons. They want to do that so that they can become malleable, and then they can become essentially sociopathic, right? They know exactly what's up. You remove these two things from people. And if you have to do it in a way that is psychologically damaging or psychologically manipulative, they don't care. They don't care at all. Because what they want is they want willing participants who can carry out a specific agenda without those two things hampering them. Without hampering them. So we have to understand that, and we have to have our own relationship with that. But it's different, right? We don't want to become sociopaths. We don't want to become them. But we do want to be able to manage guilt and shame to the point where if we do something and we walk through a grocery store without a mask, we don't want to feel ashamed. That's the first level of like the barrier to walking through that experience without a mask. It's shame. Oh, I'm going to feel ashamed. I'm going to be the only person without a mask. And then the other one is guilt. Oh, you should feel guilty. You should feel guilty. Look at the rest of us. We're doing our part. Well, how come you're not doing your part? Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, boy. Now I'm ashamed and now I'm guilty, and let me run to the nearest fucking mask, okay? Right? That's how it works. That is frontline programming right there. Right there. Frontline programming. If you want to break the frontline programming, it's not as hard as you think. It is not as hard as you think. And that's just one level. One level. Right? And that leads to that can lead you to a sense of empowerment after that. It's easy. Simple. You're not going out and you're not being engaged in some dark esoteric act, which you ultimately will regret, and you will murder your conscience, because that's what those things are about. This is a lot more about taking out the social stigma in a way that is being implied by the culture or the society or the so-called civilization around you. That's what it's up. By the way, I want to say I am hopeful of the youth. I am hopeful of the youth. I've had a couple of readings the last couple of days. Yesterday, two young men. It looks like Chad is here. Two young men, one in his about 19 and the other in his 20s. Pluto and Sag, Zoomers, great readings, lots of potential there. Just saying from the front lines. All right, let's bring Chad in. Hello, Chad.
Hi, Robert. I'm so sorry. I had some technical difficulties getting in here. I apologize, man.
No worries. You're here, and that's all that counts. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I was here the whole first hour watching you. I just had some trouble getting in.
No worries, man. I've been following your work for a long time now. With the Detroit Stargate stuff, which I thought was really, really fascinating, and a little bit with the St. Louis Arch, which I want to talk about, and then your newest piece with Lake Superior, which is pretty mind blowing. And so I want to talk about all three of those things. I also want to learn a little bit more about you, and how you sort of wrap your head around sort of this visible, invisible world around us, and how that all came to be, and some of the connections you made. And let's start there.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a long journey. Initially, up until I was about 30 years old, I was not into any of this stuff. I have a very science-based family. Both my dad's dad and stepdad are science teachers. My sister's a science teacher. So this was the farthest from my mind until I had a UFO sighting. And I seen something I absolutely could not explain away, no matter how hard I tried. And that kind of nudged me to start doing some research.
How long ago was that? How long did you have that sighting?
That would have been, probably 15 years ago now. And
so around 2005?
Actually, it would have been a little longer. I think it was more like 2002, 2001-ish.
And can you describe the UFO and the duration, like the experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I was living up in Petoskey, Michigan, and my house overlooked a giant bay on the lake. Mm-hmm. And I could see from horizon to horizon. So I was very used to seeing airplane traffic fly across the bay. And I was watching a storm roll in one day. And out of the front of that storm came for lack of better words, a cylindrical silver object that zipped across the entire sky from horizon to horizon, and I would guess a couple seconds, maybe 2 or 3 seconds.
So was cylindrical like a tube? Is that what you would describe it as, or round?
Kind of in between. I wouldn't
Okay.
say like the classic flying saucer picture you see on TV or something,
Right.
but not quite a tube. But I mean, it was going so fast, it was almost hard to make out, totally the shape.
Right.
But I would say almost in between a tube and a normal UFO you would see.
Right.
And there are military bases up here, but it couldn't, I couldn't figure it out. It couldn't have been a missile. It was at the
Right.
same level above the lake the entire way across. And anyway, that was enough to pique my interest. I didn't even, I told my wife, but I still didn't tell any of my friends or anything at that point. And just kind of under the radar started to dig into it. And I had another experience the first time I went to talk about this. I went to a Zachariah Sitchin conference. First time I got to talk to anybody about this stuff, outside of my wife. And on the way home from that conference, I had an experience going down the highway where this light mist broke out, and I was going down I-94, and this incredible rainbow broke out across the highway. And everybody was slowed down, so everybody was seeing this thing doing about 20 miles an hour in a 75 zone.
Mm-hmm.
And it was refracting around the car. The entire inside of the car looked like a rainbow.
Wow.
Like I looked over, like I didn't know if this was happening, but other people were looking around their cars, so I know it was happening.
Right.
So I pulled over on the shoulder and I actually got my camera out, started taking pictures, and it was an amazing experience. And I was listening to the Bob Marley Redemption song. I can still remember what I was listening to.
Yeah, great song.
And so I took pictures, and it was a great experience. Went home, and I was exhausted from the trip, so I went to bed early. And that night I had a dream, and in that dream, I usually don't have realistic dreams, but in that dream, it was so realistic, and I was floating up to this rainbow.
Mm-hmm.
And out of the rainbow shot this reddish orange UFO,
Right.
which stopped right in front of me. And I guess you'd say I had a transmission or something said, investigate the rainbow. And I woke up. And it was unlike any other dream I had before. It was real enough where I got up at 3:14 in the morning exactly,
Mm-hmm.
and I hadn't downloaded the pictures yet. I got up in the middle of the night, I downloaded the pictures, and sure enough, in 2 of the pictures, right next to the rainbow is this orangish, reddish UFO, for lack of better words. And it was the exact thing I seen in my dream. I don't recall seeing it during the experience.
Right.
But that was enough to where that really propelled me and got my research going. Now I had 2 things I just couldn't explain, and that did something to me where I really started researching. I got into the ancient mounds, and I got into the star ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of led me in a roundabout way to portals.
Mm-hmm.
The portals led me in a roundabout way to some of the ancient architecture and parks in the cities.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of, where I got my start and where I'm at now.
Do you still have that picture with the orange UFO?
I do.
Is that on your website? Is that on your website?
It is. If you go to my website, I think the name of the article is it's one of my first articles. It might be the Rainbow Connection, or
I've got your website up here ready to go, by the way.
Okay.
Let me see where it is. We got Stargate Detroit, Mysterious Star Forts, Project Great Lakes. Should I do a search on Rainbow on there? Or should I do is there a search function?
See, I'm going to see if I can find what page it's on for you real quick.
Okay. So we got to see this.
Let's see. Okay, scaling the shimmering path of the gods.
Okay. You could pull that up and I could do a screen share.
Okay.
I think we could, let me see. Let's try that. Hold on a second. Let me see what we got. Maybe you have to do it from my end. So it's where do I go on your site?
Okay, you see where all my articles are going across the main page?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you go to, I think it's the 3rd page in.
Okay. All right. What do we have here? Dogmen, of Michigan, scaling the shimmering path. All right, let's pull this up.
That's the one.
All right, and
it's right at the top. A couple pictures.
Oh
down.
yeah, there it is. Let's do a screen share. Here we go. Let's see.
And I had never heard of something similar to this ever over the last, as long as I've been doing this, until about 3 months ago. A guy over in Illinois he found this on the line somehow and had a super similar experience.
Here it is. Look at that.
Yeah, and he sent me his pictures, and this other guy has a picture of this almost identical object next to a rainbow too.
Interesting.
And I have no clue what it is, but I just don't know. But it was enough, when I had to have the dream and then download it in the middle of the night.
And there it was.
And there it was. It did something to me.
I love this. This is great.
So long story short, the transmission or whatever I got in my head said investigate the rainbow, and over the years that in different aspects has come into play in some of my work. As far as symbolism, in particular the gateway arch, like you was talking about.
Right. So let me ask you a question. Did you feel chosen in some ways?
No, I never, I don't want to say I feel chosen whatsoever. I just
you don't feel like a consciousness sort of singled you out and said, Chad, you got to go in this direction.
I don't know. Like I've never taken it like that, like chosen. I've always kind of taken it like other people probably have these experiences too. Like that other guy that just emailed me had the same experience. I mean, I don't know. I never felt like I was chosen, but I don't know if it's when people are, in a certain frequency, in a certain space. Like I was in one of the best moods, best feelings I've had in a long time when it happened. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But no, I don't feel necessarily chosen whatsoever, but I feel privileged, to have had an experience. Without those two experiences, I don't know if I would have, been into all this stuff.
Change your life and change other people's lives too.
It did. Like literally a picture from a rainbow somehow changed the course of my life in quite a big way.
Well, the rainbow energy is very interesting. I had a rainbow experience one time in Wisconsin, and I was going to this small, speaking of communitarian, I was going to this small, intentional community in Plymouth, Wisconsin. And I had never been to Wisconsin before. I was going to meet a group of people there and live in this place for a month. And it was set aside and very intentional. And I was picked up at a bus station by a woman, and we picked up two women, and we went up to Plymouth. And as we went up the highway from Milwaukee to Plymouth, this intense rainstorm, very intense rainstorm, like it was so intense that we could barely see 5 feet in front of us on the highway. And so as we pull into Plymouth, it starts to abate, and it gets quiet. And then as we roll into the property, it stops. And then as we get to the property, there's a rainbow going over the property. Okay. And all these people from the house who were waiting, kind of the last people to show up, come out of the house, and they come to greet us. And there's this young woman, and she's got a freaking monarch butterfly on her third eye. Okay. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And literally a monarch had just come out of a chrysalis, and this gal picked the monarch up and stuck it on her third eye. And so it had just emerged, and she walks over to us with all these other people. And I'm like, my mind is blowing right now. Right. So then they all go inside to eat. But I decided I wanted to just take a moment and see where I was. And I guess the area is called the Kettle Moraine. It's kind of hilly.
Okay. Yep.
So their property stood on kind of this rolling hill, and I went over to just kind of look at the vista, and all of a sudden I felt this energy come up through the ground, and it was like the land was like greeting me, and again it was all this rainbow kind of effect, and it happened in Wisconsin. So there I think there's some interesting power with this rainbow frequency and rainbow consciousness. Have you dove into that any further, like as kind of beyond the arch in St. Louis, but sort of the magnetic spectrum and the things that compose a rainbow?
Well, of course, the one thing that makes it super interesting to me is it's all about your perspective. If you're not, a rainbow is very individual, because if you're not in the right place at the right time, you have to be facing the right direction. The sun has to be at the right angle behind you. It has to be between 42 and 48 degrees. So it can be everybody won't see it. You got to be at the right place at the right time. And on top of that, maybe in the right frequency, and that's kind of the best I can get from it. But, I've had the rainbow synchronicities, over the years where they're more, there's got to, like you said, there's got to be something to it. When shortly after, when I first got into this, when I first started doing presentations, I used to practice in my living room. I'd practice my presentation 20 times before I went and gave it.
Right.
And I had a Rottweiler. His name was Marley, who used to lay on the couch and he was my audience and watch me give these presentations.
Yeah.
And this sounds ridiculous, but it was a joke between me and my wife. Every time I got to the Gateway Arch and I started to go into the symbolism of the Rainbow Bridge, he would give that old Rottweiler look. He would tilt his head and he would be looking at my screens. It kind of became a joke with me and my wife. And when he passed away, we built a big mound, put some crystals on it, and we buried his ashes. And I was waiting for my wife to actually get home before we actually put his ashes in the mound. And she got home. We walked out to the mound, put his ashes in. That moment, a storm, not even a storm, just a light mist broke out with the biggest rainbow you can imagine.
Wow, that's so cool.
And I think that might even be in this article too, towards the end of the article. But, so there's something to it. I think it can be very individualized and very personalized. And I'm sure, like I said, I've had emails from another guy who's having these same rainbow experiences with UFOs and other things. And he made it clear to me he's not into any of this stuff and he doesn't know what to make of it, Right. But, he said it's changing his life. Like he's sending me all this stuff on the hollow earth and all this research he's doing. And you can just tell by the stuff he's sending me, it's changed him.
Right.
This rainbow experience, whatever it may be, I don't know, but there's something to it, I feel. Yeah,
I think Jimi Hendrix's last concert film is Rainbow Bridge, right?
Rainbow Bridge, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a song in there called Pally Gap. So you come from a science background, science family. How does your family, who are probably very rational and very logical, how are they evolving with your life path? Shall we say?
Actually, they are surprisingly open to it. Way more so than I would have ever expected.
Yeah.
My dad in particular, like for years, the thing he would always say to me when I got into this is every time we were doing a work project outside or something is, who built the pyramids? Who built the pyramids? Just man built the pyramids. We can do anything, which they
right.
But over the years, like he understands at least where I'm coming from now. He understands there's still maybe man built the pyramids, but there's some mystery there. Where'd they get their designs or what? And they're at least open enough to listen to the other sides of the story, which is a lot to ask for, I think.
Well, at least if you could have a dialogue, you're in a good place.
That's exactly it.
Well, why don't we dive into your website, which is a great looking website, by the way.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. So let's, here we go. We're just going to start doing some screen sharing here. And we go, let me make sure I get the right, I'm on page 3. I want to get to page 1. Hold on. Right there. Okay. There we go. All right. Do a little screen share. And we'll just bounce around here a little bit.
Okay.
Why don't we start with your latest piece, which is Project Great Lakes, Hidden Realms, Mystery Zones, and Unexplained Phenomena. and you're really looking at Lake Superior in this article primarily, right? Is that right?
I look at a little bit of all of it. I talk about a couple cases in Lake Michigan. I talk about one in Lake Erie, the underwater anomaly, and the Kinross case. So those are all up in Lake Superior.
Right.
So I touch on everything except for I don't think I get into Lake Huron in this article.
So the underwater anomaly is this unusual. It's like an oval, right? I mean, this is what I watched your video on that, and it's can you describe it kind of more specifically for folks? This underwater anomaly that you discovered.
Yeah, it's off the coast of Isle Royale, which is up in Lake Superior, and it's in about 500 feet of water. And it's like Robert said, somewhat of an oval shape, and it's very, very uniform. The walls on it are very uniform height, around 250 feet tall. The width of the walls are very uniform. The floor across the structure is the exact same elevation, which would be very unusual for an unnatural object. And there appears to be an opening almost, or entrance leading into it, for lack of better terms, on one side of it. It's like 3.5 miles by 2.5 miles, I believe it was. It's so, an enormous structure. And up until this point, it's not documented anywhere. I've searched. I waited like 10 years to put this out because I figured it had to be somewhere, and it's not. So not sure what it is. It's too deep to scuba dive, and so I put out this article and video on it a year ago, hoping, realistically, hoping somebody would know what it was, so I could kind of quit thinking about it because it's been on my mind for years, and I haven't got one, reasonable answer really for what it could be. So that, we're kind of left with a mystery until basically an expedition or something.
How did you stumble upon it?
Yeah, I was researching the copper mystery, and the Isle Royale, right where this anomaly is located off of, was home to ancient copper that was 100% pure, and there's ancient copper mines that date up 8,000 to 10,000 years old. And the mystery is that all this copper that was mined, upwards of 500 million pounds, is missing, so to speak. They find little trinkets across North America, but nowhere near enough to account for all these mines. So I was researching the mines and researching the possible entranceways or ports that boats from, Europe or someplace could have got into this island. And when I was, Google Earthing the island and doing close-ups, that's when I discovered it. I mean, if you Google Earth the island, Isle Royale, anybody, as soon as you zoom in, you can't miss it. I mean, it's right. It's right off the north shore of the island, and it just does not fit in with the surroundings.
Right. Yeah. So you also looks like you found a version of like a Bermuda Triangle here as well.
Well, the large triangle is what authors from the 1980s, they would call it the Great Lakes Triangle. And that way they encapsulated all the Great Lakes. And within the Great Lakes Triangle, per square mile, way more ships and planes have vanished than the Bermuda Triangle. So they started with the Great Lakes Triangle. Then in the 90s, if you see the smaller red triangle in the bottom,
right there.
That's called the Lake Michigan Triangle.
Okay.
Now within that triangle, things get even weirder. There are just hundreds and hundreds of ships and planes and people that have vanished or, unexplained failures of equipment. So it becomes even more focused in that area.
Right.
So
interesting. Very interesting. And you have a number of incidents here where flights go missing.
Yeah.
We have, of course, the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, which is captured by Gordon Lightfoot. But now we have true X-Men killed in Chet's crash. There's a lot going on here.
There's a ton going on, and if there was just one or just a few shipwrecks or this and that, it'd be normal. These were the highways back in the day, the lakes. But it's the unusual circumstances that surround a lot of these incidents that, in conjunction with each other, there's just something else to it.
Now, where did you pick this up? The sonar scan of Lake Michigan Stonehenge. How did you come across that?
Well, this is about 30 miles from where I live, and it's in Grand Traverse Bay,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the northern part of Lake Michigan. And in 2007, a local archaeologist from Northwestern Michigan College here was out looking for shipwrecks in the bay, and they were doing sonar scans, and they came across this underwater circle. So they went down and checked it out, got their scuba gear on, and when they got down there, they found out it was a perfect circle of giant, like 5 to 6 foot boulders.
Mm-hmm.
And on one of the boulders is a giant carving of a mastodon.
Yeah, it's right there.
Right there. I mean, it's pretty unmistakable, So they did some studies and figured out when this would have been on dry land, and it had to be at least 10,000 years ago when, this was made.
Wow.
And leading away from the stone circle, this is, great. There's a mile-long straight line of boulders that leads away from the circle directly north.
Right here? Is that what we're looking at? These boulders right here?
You can only catch the first couple boulders on the outside.
Okay. Is that over here? Is that it? Is that right? Is that
Yeah, that's probably one of them.
Okay.
But yeah, I have it on. I'm doing a YouTube clip that should be up in a couple of days, and I got a nice picture of the mile-long boulders on that.
Okay.
But anyway, this mile-long line of boulders points directly north to Beaver Island, which is a little bit north, and there's another stone circle on that island that this mile-long line of boulders points to.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Now, here's the anomaly that we were talking about right here.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, super uniform. I mean, if you look at the tops of the walls are the same width all the way across. The height of the walls are the same height.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really uniform, And I had several people on the YouTube clip, like the number one thing people try to dismiss it as is a glitch, with Google, or artifact with Google.
Right.
But you can find it on the bathymetric maps. So
it's there aside from Google.
It's there aside from Google, and that's a big point I make. Everybody sees it and says that's too good to be true. That's basically a relic from Google. And it is not.
Wow, this is kind of. I mean, now in the video, you postulate that it could be any number of things.
Yeah. So like I said, I waited a good 10 years at least before I put this out, and over the years, I'd show it to people and ask them, what would you think this is? So I can't, my top couple answers were, one was a cometary impact, which is possible.
Right.
Volcanism, this was a volcanic area. But with both of those, the issue is the Great Lakes here were made by glaciers scraping back and forth across the ground. So if it was the top of a volcano, unless it was active the last 10,000 years, those glaciers should have scraped it away the last time they retreated it.
Right.
And same with the cometary impact. It's really still looks really fresh to be a cometary impact. And another one was an ancient mound site, which it resembles ancient mounds down in Ohio.
Yep.
But the issue with that is, the biggest one in Ohio is in Newark, and it's, I want to say like a half mile across, the Great Mound of Ohio. And this thing here, this is 3 miles across. So this would dwarf any mound anywhere. So, possible, but not so sure. Other possibility was an ancient mining operation. We talked about the island itself was just littered with pure copper. So it's been postulated like an Atlantean mining operation, possibly. Something of this size and this magnitude. Whoever was mining on the island was doing little mining pits. It's not the same as this structure out here. So, and last but not least, it's been postulated possibly an underwater governmental base, or UFO base, or a combination of the two.
I think all three of these could fit together, right? Like it could have been a mining operation and abandoned and then sort of repurposed by these two entities quite possibly.
Exactly. And see, Emily said something along the same line. She said, why couldn't it be all of them? Why
That doesn't surprise me.
yeah, why couldn't it be an asteroid strike? And they came and mined it, and they turned it, and then the government turned it into a base.
Right.
It could be, like it could be all of them, or it could be none of them. Something I haven't even thought of yet. But
It looks like an ear. It kind of looks like an ear.
it does look like an ear. Absolutely.
Giant ear. So there's a couple of interesting factoids about Lake Superior, and I ran across this term, oligotrophic. Are you familiar with this term?
No, I'm not.
So apparently, it's different than some of the other lakes in that area, and an oligotrophic lake is a lake with low primary productivity as a result of low nutrient content. So if this gets into the copper thing, right? If there's low nutrient content, like maybe it's been removed at some point, these lakes have low algal production and consequently have very clear waters with high drinking water quality. The bottom of such lakes typically have ample oxygen. Thus, such lakes often support many fish species, such as lake trout, which require cold, well-oxygenated water. The oxygen content is likely to be higher in deep lakes owing to their hypolimnetic volume. Ecologists use the term oligotropic to distinguish unproductive lakes characterized by nutrient deficiency from productive eutropic lakes with an ample excessive nutrient supply. So this is interesting in that these lakes are most common in cold regions underlain by resistant igneous rocks, especially granite bedrock. So apparently Superior is different than some of the other lakes in the Great Lakes area, and that it falls under this category.
Yes, absolutely. And Superior is much igneous rock because it was a super volcanic area in the ancient past, unlike the lower lakes.
Right.
Absolutely. And that's how at one time when it blew up, a caldera blew up and then it collapsed. It was these parts, my elbows, that were still sticking up that held all the ancient copper. But at one time, that was bedrock. And then when the caldera collapsed, that bedrock, this is actually Isle Royal, was sticking up.
Interesting. Hey, so where is that Oak Island? Is that up there too? That Oak Island where Discovery Channel had that whole series on?
No, Oak Island is actually in Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia. Okay.
Nova Scotia. But Marty, who does all the research on Oak Island, lives here in Traverse City.
Okay. All right. So are you going to take on Oak Island at some point? Is that your future?
No, I don't think so. I think they got that one handled.
That raked over pretty well.
Yeah.
Let's check out. I want to drop into the St. Louis stuff because I think that's really very interesting. And let me cue it up here.
Yeah, for
on your
sure.
side.
Yeah, St. Louis is a great example of a lot of the research I've been doing because I like to look at the ancient sacred landscapes and then what's been built either upon them or right next to them and be able to compare that symbolism, so to speak.
And let me see. I think it's going to be what on which page is it on in your site?
That would be
Page 4. Page 4.
Last one. Yep.
Okay. Let's throw this up here. And now I've always considered the Arch in St. Louis to be heavily Masonic. Have you found the Masonic connection in here with the Arch?
Well, it's built on what's called the Catenary Arch, which is Masonic in itself.
Right.
Now, the builder, or not the builder, but I'm sorry, the architect and designer was not Masonic. I dug super deep because I thought he would be. His name was Eero Saarinen, and he wasn't. But that doesn't mean that he didn't have influences behind him, Right. Now, the guy who designed it, he has a super interesting past. Not only did he had a vision for the Gateway Arch in 1947. He had two visions, he said. He had a vision for the Gateway Arch, and he had a vision for a park on the waterfront of the Detroit River. And that park would later be the other park I talk about, Hart Plaza, which also has portal symbolism.
Mm-hmm.
So the same guy had the same visions in 1947 for these two parks.
Interesting. Very interesting. All right. What about the dimensions of this thing? What did you break down with the dimensions?
The dimensions, it is 630 feet tall. And I'm not sure what the significance is of the 63, but it's 630 feet tall. And the Stargate at the other park in Detroit is 63 feet tall.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. So not only were they visioned by the same guy, but the numbers are, somewhat correlate.
And what year was the arch completed?
I want to say it was in the 60s. It was envisioned in 47. Then they had a contest, and he won the contest. I want to say it was in the 60s sometime.
Okay. So 20th century, yes?
Yeah.
All right. And where is it aligned? Like where so if you were standing on one side of the arch and looking, say, east, right? Let's west side of the arch looking east. Where is that aligned to?
See, looking east, I believe you would be looking. Actually, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I'm not sure. I'm trying to figure it out in my head. The only way I know for sure is when you're looking out the windows, which I believe is north. You look out at Cahokia Mounds.
Okay. So you can see the mounds through the arch?
You can't quite see the mounds. You can kind of see where the trees end and it becomes flat, but you can see the arch from the mounds. And
what was in that area pre-arch? Have you looked into that?
Yes, it was all mounds. It was called Mound City, and Cahokia Mounds, biggest mound site in America now, is 7 miles away. But at one time, that mound site extended all the way to the St. Louis River where the Gateway Arch is now. Mm-hmm. So that's another correlation between the St. Louis and the Detroit parks. Both parks were built on ancient mound sites.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So height is 630 feet, and let me just see if we can get any factoids in there about the arch. Let's see. So, it was construction started on February 12th, 1963.
63. There we go.
So there's your chart for your astrological chart for the arch is Aquarian. That's when they broke the ground. And then it was completed on October 28th, 1965. So, and then it was inaugurated on June 10th, 1967. So these are all very interesting from an astrological perspective. February 12th is Aquarius, which is the eagle. October 28th is Scorpio, which is the serpent. So we have the eagle and the serpent, which are connected to the rainbow. Mm-hmm. And then the inauguration is on June 10th, which is the sign of Gemini in duality and two worlds. So these are three very interesting dates for, and then Eero Saarinen, of course, is the architect there. Right. And it looks like it was 1933 where they started to fund this thing.
Wow. Now that I didn't know. That's super interesting.
Yeah. And the guy who was, and this is just all on the fly. I'm just, this is interesting now. This is very interesting. The guy that was sort of the driver is a guy by the name of Luther Eli Smith. Have you encountered him at all?
No.
Okay, so this is the guy. He was a St. Louis, Missouri lawyer and civic booster, and he's been described by the National Park Service as the father of the Jefferson National Expansion Memorial, which was renamed the Gateway Arch. Mm-hmm. So he chaired the association to develop the memorial for nearly 15 years. Now, what's interesting is he's born on June 11th. And they inaugurate the art one day before his birthday on June 10th.
Right.
This, and he's from Downers Grove. What is interesting about Downers Grove? Isn't that where War of the Worlds was supposed to happen?
Is it? I don't know.
What is? Hold on. What's up with Downers Grove? There's something
Sounds
about.
familiar.
Hold on. What is this now? There's something about. Oh man, it'll come to me. Downers Grove. Downers Grove has something to do with. I'll figure it out. But this guy, Luther Eli Smith, I know nothing about him. I'm just going on the fly here. He's the guy that the idea of the arch. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Here's a synchronicity. In the 1920s, his Amherst schoolmate, Calvin Coolidge. I was just talking about Calvin Coolidge. Then the president appointed him to a federal commission to supervise design construction of the George Rogers Clark Memorial in Vincennes, Indiana. So he's connected to this guy, to Calvin Coolidge. Interesting. Anyway, there's your dude, Luther Eli Smith. If you want to, you can maybe do a bit of a dive with him.
We're going to have to dive into him for sure.
Yeah. So what else do we know about the arch? Let me just see here real quick. If there's any other factoids. Let's see. Initial planning, railroad agreement, blah, 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 construction, topping out, dedication. So there's a whole mathematical section. I am not a math guy at all.
Yeah, I'm not either. All I know is I know it's based on the catenary arch. That's when you hold a chain at both ends and the shape it takes when it free falls.
Right.
I do know that is Masonic.
The letter Q plays a role in here. Like Q equals 125.1406 square feet. This is interesting stuff. What about they illuminate the arch?
Yes.
Have you tracked the illumination cycles or anything interesting around that?
I haven't tracked the cycles, but when you pull into town at night, it looks like a rainbow. When they're illuminating it, the way the stainless steels reflects off the city lights, it reflects it like it's a giant rainbow. And that's part of what drew me to it eventually, because I was at that time, it was right after the UFO thing, I was looking at the rainbow bridge symbolism. So that was one of the first things I looked at when I went here. And it glistens like a rainbow, but that's not enough. But when you go inside the arch, when you go in the basement or the underworld of the arch, one of the first things you see is what's called the builder's mural. And it's this giant mural of all the nation's monuments, the Statue of Liberty, Mount Rushmore, and Utah's Rainbow Bridge. There's a giant depiction of Utah's Rainbow Bridge. So I was like, all right, man, there is some Rainbow Bridge symbolism in there.
Absolutely.
No question. And now they've changed it a little since I've been there. But when I was there last, right in front of the Rainbow Bridge picture was a statue of Thomas Jefferson. And Thomas Jefferson is standing in these concentric rings, and he's surrounded by a golden velvet rope. And according to the artist, like I'm not making this up, according to the artist, I went into the gift shop and got the book. The artist said that Thomas Jefferson is standing in a space-time continuum beneath the Gateway Arch.
Interesting.
Yeah, so literally, I mean, the symbolism there, you got Thomas Jefferson standing in a space-time continuum, according to the artist, in the basement of what could be symbolically seen as a rainbow bridge or a gateway between worlds.
Interesting. Really interesting. Did you know about this incident in 1980 where the guy parachuted off of it?
No, I did not.
So check this out. This is weird. Okay, this is weird. I'm just. Let me go back in here. You don't mind if we do this, do you?
No, that's great.
Okay, so check this out. I was just looking at this, and the numbers around it are very strange. They're very, very strange. So let's do. Where is it? Here we go. So check this out. So 1980, let's look at the numbers. November 22nd, that's 11/22, right? That's the day that Kennedy was killed. November 22nd, 1980, at about 8:45 a.m. That's when essentially the Twin
8:46.
Towers went down.
Yeah.
Now, how
Wow.
weird is this, right?
That's weird.
And then you got 33-year-old
What?
Kenneth Swires of Overland, Missouri. Where'd he go? Oh, that's Eli Smith. Hold on. Let me get back here. Hold on. He parachuted onto the top of the arch. His plan was to release his main parachute, then jump off the arch using his reserve parachute to form a base jump. So he's going to do a base jump off the top of the arch. Unfortunately, after landing, the wind blew him to the side and he slid down the northern leg to his death. The accident was witnessed by several people, including Swire's wife, also a parachutist. She said her husband was not a hot dog, daredevil skydiver, and that he prepared for the jump for 2 weeks in advance. Swires, who had made over 1,600 jumps before the incident, was reported by one witness to have landed very well on top of the arch, but had no footing. Swires was reportedly blown to the top of the arch by a wind. It was unable to save himself.
That's mind-boggling. How could you land on the top? That's crazy.
The aviation administration said the jump was unauthorized, but look at those dates.
Yeah, that's
11:22 and then 8:45.
33 years old.
33 years old. That just rings a ritual, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I tell you what, if you've been there, man, the top of that arch is
Yeah.
not very wide. And it's not very wide, and it's not very long. That's mind-boggling to even attempt that.
So there's another one where Santa Claus supposedly parachuted onto the arch. I'm going to leave that one alone. So let's talk about the Rainbow Bridge a little bit. What are your findings around this idea, this concept of the Rainbow Bridge in terms of either gateways, portals, also the human experience?
Cultures around the world and their mythology many times would have versions, Rainbow Bridge, Rainbow Snakes, and more times than not, they had something to do with either passing into the afterlife or other realms.
Mm-hmm.
And, kind of in a general sense, but I mean, Australia, the Nordics, they all had the same general rainbow that was a transportation device between worlds, between life and death, what have you. And that's why I find it interesting. Well, it's interesting, even that guy we just talked about who died sliding down the side of the Rainbow Bridge. Yeah, I don't. It's always connected, to a gateway or a way to traverse realms.
Another connection with the Rainbow Bridge that I've heard is the syncing of the right and the left brain hemispheres.
Yep, that's another one. Yeah,
that we're in sync, right? And that happens when you connect, the root chakra, the crown chakra, and it comes together, and it's all connected. That's interesting stuff. Where do you go next? What are you working on next?
I'm still. I haven't left the Project Great Lakes thing yet. I called it Project Great Lakes because I have tons and tons of stories I've been collecting over the years, and I put 4 or 5 of them in my article. But I think I'm gonna, keep on going for a little bit, because when you hear 4 or 5 of them, it's super interesting and strange. But when you hear 50 of them, and they have all these strange correlations and coincidences and connections, it changes it, So I'm really focusing in. I'm going to keep looking at some of these spots. I kind of relate it to, I've been looking at the urban portals where the architecture has been built on these places that I believe cosmic and earthly energies accumulate. And what I'm looking at now is places many times in rural areas or in the lakes where they haven't been able to be harnessed yet. And I think that maybe what's happening in some cases when airplanes and boats are having mechanical failures and people are having weird consciousness effects. So I'm really looking into some of these other places, out in the lakes and underwater stone circles and, ancient sacred sites that haven't been harnessed yet, and try to figure out some of the science behind it. And a lot of them just happen to be around magnetic anomalies. So I'm trying to somewhat figure out that connection.
Grover's Mill, by the way, is the city town that appears in War of the Worlds, not Downers Grove.
Okay, close.
What about Pyramid Lake? You know anything about Pyramid Lake in California?
Oh, in
Nevada? Nevada? It's Nevada, actually.
Oh, no, I do not.
Oh, Pyramid Lake. That's a place you want to hang out at sometime.
Okay, in Nevada.
Yeah, you basically go around Pyramid Lake to eventually get to where Burning Man
Okay.
would be held. Pyramid Lake is weird.
Okay, no.
It is very weird. And I broke down outside of Pyramid Lake on my way to Burning Man one year. And so we got picked up by local, tow truck driver guy. And he told me all kinds of stuff that literally there are craft that come out of Pyramid Lake. There are apparitions, like ghost dancing Indians, like crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So if you ever get out west, and that would be an interesting place
I'd love yeah, and that's
to check out.
a very similar scenario. Like most of these places, it's not like they usually have one phenomenon. Usually it's not just missing boats or UFOs. Usually if you find one of these places, it's the whole gamut. It'll be cryptozoology, UFOs, ancient sacred sites, consciousness effects for usually when you find one of these areas, you'll get all kinds of stories from all different kinds of phenomenons. So that's what's interesting to me, because to have all those phenomenons in one spot, there's only so many scenarios. So
let me give you a visual of this Pyramid Lake. So
yeah, please
check it out.
So wow.
Hence the pyramid, and then you've got this mound in the middle.
Yeah.
And surrounded by water. And let me see if we got any other photos. Shoreline. There's some of the local habitat. Look at this.
Yeah. Wow. Yes. Say the pyramid surrounded by water. That says a lot to me. Yeah. Say all the urban portals I look at, all the parks are. Oh, well, I won't say always. 9 out of 10 times are either on a river or surrounded by water, and 9 out of 10 times all these other things I'm looking at are surrounded by water. I think water in some aspect, I don't know how, but water in some aspect I believe has something to do with all this. And I don't know if it's the frequency, if it's the way it can hold memory. I'm not sure, but there's all these sites and all these happenings, more times than not, are surrounded by water. So that pyramid sitting in the middle of that water, I can understand how that could have some crazy effects out there.
Yeah. Where are you on the whole Tartaria thing?
I haven't really dug into it too much. I've had people send me stuff on it, but I haven't really dug into it that much, to be honest.
You're one of the people that I've talked about, and a number of people who watch this channel follow is John Levy, and his latest video on fountains is really interesting.
Okay.
And I think you would dig it, because he gets like, why do these fountains exist?
Yeah.
And he makes a really interesting correlation in that these fountains, which are still around, by the way, are magnificent. Like, I think is it Omaha, or is it Lawrence, Kansas? One of those cities is like got a ton of these fountains.
Okay.
And he makes a really interesting case in that they built these fountains, which are so sophisticated, but supposedly at the time people were, using outhouses and throwing their, human waste in buckets. Like, does that make any sense? That they would have to resort to outhouses. In the meantime, they're building these incredible fountains.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Say all the parks I look at have incredible fountains.
Yeah.
Also, say they'll be, most of them, the feature usually, say Stargate Detroit, the fountain is called the Horus and Sun Fountain.
Right.
It has incredible Egyptian symbolism and has 300 lighting functions and 300 water jets. And the artist Osamu Noguchi said, the symbolism in this fountain won't be recognized until the time is right.
Really?
So very, very cryptic, but it goes along with what you're saying with these fountains. Like, they put a lot of energy and a lot of effort into making these fountains something spectacular.
Well, one of the things that John Levy talks about is that that these fountains might have been set up in a way where, like, again, I think it's Omaha or Lawrence, one of the two, that because of the network of fountains, that they could project water up to 400 feet in the air, and that if you had a network of fountains like that and they were on, that they would not, like, you, it would not be easy to burn a place down.
Yeah.
Right, that the fountains actually would create sort of a dome mist around, like, where people were living, and they could protect themselves from that. I thought that was an interesting potential there, or interesting insight with that.
Yeah, for sure. And we were talking about the rainbow briefly, and if you have a fountain, there's always a rainbow. If the sun's, you just got to stand in the right location.
That's true.
Yeah, there's always a rainbow. They just got to stand with the sun at your back.
All right, so here we go. We're just going to drop into Detroit here in Stargate Park. Here we have, well, this is interesting because it's more than an arch. This is more than an arch.
It's two arches connected by a light at the very top.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, according to the artist, this was for Detroit's 300th birthday, and this is supposed to be a gear. This is a United Auto Workers monument, and it's supposed to be a giant gear protruding from the earth, is what the artist said. But I asked him about it. Actually, I got a hold of him. His name was David Barr, and I actually asked him, I'm looking into Stargate symbolism. Did it ever cross your mind? And he was kind enough to write me back. He said, it never crossed my mind, but the green granite spiral that leads around and through the gateway, he said it allows the visitor to take a contemplative walk to leave the grid of the city for the sphere of space.
Oh, interesting.
So he basically described a Stargate to me, even though, he never thought of one.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's part of my research, is these guys seem to get this subconscious information sometimes, not even expecting it. And they put these monuments that just happen to fit in, with these parks.
It's it is the realm of art, and there are these, archetypal symbols and images that are, swirling around the subconscious. So is this a permanent structure? Is this an obelisk that is permanent there?
Yep, it's called the pylon. Yep, it's a permanent structure, and it makes a quarter wide twist as it ascends to the heavens, and that's by the same guy as the fountain, Asama Noguchi, and it's symbolic of our relationship to space flight, he says.
Well, this is obviously the masculine and the feminine here, right?
Yeah, let's say we got the masculine rod, we got the feminine ring.
Right.
And we also got the feminine ring on the fountain he built. And if you stand on one side of the fountain, that rod literally goes right through the ring.
Interesting. Is this what we're talking about? That rod right there? Is that it? That one? Or is that it? What is this in the background here?
That is just a light pole, actually. Okay. Say the rod there would be to your right.
Oh, this is fascinating.
There's your fountain right there.
Look at that.
Yep, and that's the Horace and Son Dodge Memorial Fountain. And Horace's son was Horace Jr. Right,
Horace. You gotta love this, right? Horace and Son.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. Horace E. Dodge.
Yeah, and the sign that goes along with it says, this is the engine of water at a gateway to a great city, literally calling this park a gateway.
Is this like a carburetor or something? Is that what that's supposed to be?
I don't know what it's supposed to be.
Like an air ring filter or something like that?
Yeah. It got 300 water jets that just blast the water down into that pool there, and then it recirculates. And all those little dots up there are lights at night that light up. It looks like a UFO blasting off, basically.
And then, did you capture this rainbow? Was that there at that time?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Those ladies kind of got upset with me, asked me why I was taking their picture, because they didn't realize they were standing in the rainbow. Like, from my perspective, they're in a rainbow, but they had no clue. So they're like, "Why do you keep taking our picture?"
They're just warming up for the Purple Revolution. That's what
they're just getting their hands wet. But yeah, they're in the rainbow.
Okay, here we go. Now you're catching some rainbow spectrum here. Now this is in Detroit at Woodlawn.
This is Woodlawn Cemetery off 8 Mile in Detroit, and this is the Horace Dodge Mausoleum. So the guy that fountain was dedicated to, I thought I'd go and, pay my respects. And this is his mausoleum. And it's flanked by sphinx, obelisks surrounding it.
Oh,
I crept up and looked in the door there. And then in the back of the mausoleum, there's a giant stained glass relief of the Great Pyramids.
okay.
I mean,
This guy's got to be a Mason.
he was a Mason. Him and his brother were both Freemasons.
Yeah. Oh, look at this.
Yeah, there I'm showing the symbolism. Not only was it dedicated to Horus and Sun, but you could also say it symbolizes Egyptian goddess Nuit, who happened to be the mother to Horus the Elder. So, did he encapsulate all of that symbolism intentionally, or was it subconsciously? I can't.
It feels very intentional to me.
It feels intentionally. He did come from Egypt. He just returned from Egypt before he built this park.
He probably got initiated into some higher degree in Egypt, right?
Yeah, and my favorite part of this is like he did return from Egypt, and I showed earlier on this article how he correlated all these monuments to the constellation of Orion and the pyramids.
Right.
This all took place in the 70s. So this was 20 years before Robert Bauval ever came up with the Orion correlation.
So he got the inside information.
So either he got it legit inside information, or he was tapped into that subconscious. And I normally wouldn't say that. The only reason I even postulate that is because another project he did in 1947. And it was going to be called The Face to be Seen from Mars.
Mm-hmm.
And he was going to build this giant earthwork. And it was going to be a face with a pillar of a nose, a mile tall. So people from Mars or the moon could tell that if we destroyed ourselves in a nuclear holocaust, this is in the 40s, they would know an ancient civilization once inhabited Earth.
Oh, great.
So then 30 years later, NASA sends back images from what looks like a face on Mars,
right,
from a planet that may have, had possible nuclear devastation at some point, according to Dr. John Vandenberg.
Right.
So did he subconsciously come up with this and do the same thing when he came to Detroit? I always say it's a possibility. Or, like you said, he was in Egypt. He could have just been in the right place and got that information. And this was literally the first place it was deposited, was Hart Plaza.
Yeah. I think he probably got initiated into some higher degree of Freemasonry while he was there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
So, did you ever watch Gumby and Pokey? Did you ever watch that cartoon?
No, not I'm familiar with it, but I never watched it.
This looks like one of the blockheads.
I know what you're talking about, though. Yes, absolutely.
Here we go. Here's your Freemasonic influence. Is this the Dodge family? Is that what they are?
Nope. This is actually called the Gateway to Freedom, and this is a memorial. This was the last stop on the Underground Railroad before the slaves crossed the Detroit River into Canada.
Okay.
So this plaza was, there used to be actually underground tunnels going beneath the river.
Right.
This was known as the Gateway to Freedom.
Okay? What's going on here? Who are these characters?
Those are slaves. Those are supposed to be slaves, and then the guys looking across the river. One of them is the so-called conductor, pointing the way.
Right.
And across the river, there's a companion monument.
He looks suspiciously like a Maoist. This guy.
Yeah.
He looks like a Maoist. Let's see what else we have here. And we got the Tower of Babel, Gateway to the Gods.
Yep. And what that actually is, that is the mechanical feature that runs the Horus and Sun fountain.
Okay.
But, symbolically looking at it, you got the spiral staircase.
Yeah.
And then along the top of it, you have like 5 or 6 cameras, which we could call the Watchers.
Right.
So there you go, Tower of Babel.
So what's the vibe here in this plaza? What's it like?
The vibe is awesome, Robert. I used to go to this plaza when I was young. I used to go here and I used to skateboard here. I used to actually skateboard on all these monuments. I feel bad about it now. I used to take my dogs for walks down here.
Right.
And it was just a great place to go by myself. It felt great. And that was before I was into any of this stuff. And then once I recognized the symbolism and actually really started connecting with the plaza, this is the one piece of real estate I can say has changed my life. Like this piece of real estate, Hart Plaza and around it, has really made a difference in everything. And that's what gets me so excited about it, because I think there's a lot of these parks and people have them in their own hometowns and their home backyards.
Right.
And these places could be utilized for bad purposes, but they can also be utilized for absolutely wonderful internal purposes.
I like that. That is a positive perspective.
Yeah, and I like to point out, like, Hart Plaza is a giant gathering place, so a lot of people go there when they have festivals and stuff, which is cool.
Mhm.
But you wanna try to go there when nothing's going on. If you can go there by yourself, and that's when these parks you can really feel these parks when you're there walking around. I say just walk around, read the signs. Usually the signs will tell you half the story, surprisingly or not. Like I show you the ones like, this is the gateway to freedom. This is the engine at a gateway to a great city.
Mhm.
Then there's the stargates called the transcending gateway. Allows you to leave the grid of the city for the sphere of space. So, I mean, literally, I got half of my information just walking around, reading the signs, seeing what came to me, and at the end of the day, looking up a couple things, and the synchronicities just pile up. I tell you what,
Everything just unfolds, right?
it just unfolds, and it makes you feel, like you're on a path of sorts. Like you're on, I don't know where that path is leading, but you're on the right path.
Yeah.
And you use your intuition and follow synchronicities, and for me, it was a great time. And then to be able to share it and hope somebody else can find something similar in their own neck of the woods, which you can. I can point you to a place in almost any major city in America.
Mm-hmm.
Especially nowadays, man, we could use a place to go and get a little peace with ourselves, and
Yeah. As long as we don't have to wear a mask, I'm down with it.
Exactly. Nobody's gonna make you wear a mask in Stargate Detroit. I promise you that.
Yeah. Well, Chad, this has been absolutely fascinating. I'm so glad you were able to figure out your technical
I'm
difficulties.
so sorry. I had to upload Google Chrome real quick.
All good. Okay, so I got a link to your website, and you have some books you've written too.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So if you want to support Chad and his work, maybe get a copy of his book or two. And you're welcome here anytime. And
Well, thank you, Robert. I really appreciate it, and I enjoyed our conversation greatly.
Yeah. All right. Well, Chad, take good care and keep exploring. Okay.
Absolutely. And thank you, Robert, and love your research too. And thank you, Steve, for getting us together.
Okay. Bye for now, Chad.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
What a sweet guy, huh? What a gentle, sweet guy. Fantastic. Great interview for great guest. Let's call him a great guest. Chad Steumke, check out his website. Very cool website. Obviously, you'll spend a lot of time there and reading lots of content, and it can fuel your own exploration of the mysteries in your world that are in your own area. So yeah, explore the local anomalies of where you live. And again, I want to thank Lark in Texas for his good work, hard work, and dedication towards waking people up to this emerging reality. It really is interesting because when you look at a lot of the sort of the sacred architecture or the interdimensional architecture, and you combine it with John Levy world and Tartaria, and then we put it up against the stark projection of this communitarian Orwellian kind of Fabian society, dark techno-feudal state, right? It's sort of like you can't even compare the two, right? You can't even compare the two. And there is such a rich and profound and novel kind of timeline, alternative timeline, alternative dimension, alternative history, alternative reality that's right underneath us, right in front of our eyes, right under our noses. And that if we can open them up and begin to kind of grasp the significance of them, it gives us the potential to move into a future that is not dictated by the social blueprint or plans of others. So we need to stay inspired, and we need to fill our lives with, art and myth and this idea that there was once a great society, a great civilization that was in many ways far more technically advanced than the one that evolved out of it or de-evolved from it. Whether you believe it or not, whether you think it's real or not, at the very least, you can embrace the mythos of what that is and could be. All right, let's see what we have here. Do we have any comments? It's hard for me to load the comments sometimes. We've gone for 2.5 hours. Let me just do a quick refresh. I will go into the void while I do the quick refresh, but I'll be back. Hold on. Don't go away. I'm back. I had to exit time space for a while. Disparate archetypes to be sure. Thank you, Phoenix, for your platforms. Have a great day. Great show. Yes. Thank you. A lot of love for Chad. All good. All good. Let's see. Very gentle spirit, right? Come on. How could you not love that guy? How could you not love that guy? It's got a dog called Marley. I freaking loved my lemon twist. Okay. The old lemon twist. Oh, yes, those things. I remember those. You should see what Gumby can do today. Gumby. He was just a little green ball of clay. Gumby. Yeah, Art Clokey. Art Clokey, the creator Gumby, was a Buddhist. Imagine that. Freedom or free will. What's the difference? There's a big difference. And then what else do we have? Anybody else? Gumby was awesome. He was totally awesome. Claymation. I think we're good. Steve Mercer, thank you for helping bring Chad and Lark in Texas. Now I'm going to give you a preview of a guest that I got coming on. It's a good story. 5 minutes of your time, maybe less, if I can tell it efficiently. Okay. Okay, so I was working with a client this last week. It was a very good reading. And I said to myself, this guy's got some potential for sound healing. A lot of different ways. Percussionist, vocalist, looking for something new. And the guy that popped into my head was a guy that I hung out with a little bit back in the 90s. And his name is Wayne Perry. And Wayne is a real sound healer and using the voice and toning. And I connected with Wayne through the Whole Life Expo circuit. And I did, a few of his workshops. And one time I went to his apartment, I think in Santa Monica, and did this sort of toning jam session. It was like mind blowing, right? So I always really liked Wayne. I always liked his work. And I thought to myself, what is going on with Wayne Perry? I would love to get him on to the show. So I looked him up. I found his website. I called him. We talked for almost an hour, and he told me some amazing stories about his life and how his life changed dramatically. And it was sound healing that realigned him with his life again. Let me give you a quick glimpse into Wayne's world. And he has a website called Wayne Perry CST, the Sound Therapy Center of Los Angeles. So there's Wayne right there. He's a character, right? So he does the diagnostic brain voice analysis, holistic voice training, toning, sounding lesson, sound healing environment. Anyway, I'm gonna do an interview with Wayne next week. It won't be on the show. It won't be live, but I will pre-record it, and you're not going to want to miss this interview. Not just because I think that sound healing can change your life. I do believe it can. But it changed Wayne's life in a very dramatic and very personal way. And I'm not going to, you know, I'm not going to spill the beans. I'm going to let Wayne tell his story. And so anyway, that's a preview. That's a glimpse of a guest, and I'll probably run it next week. Okay. So you don't want to miss that. You don't want to miss Wayne's story. It's brilliant. And he's fantastic as a healer. And I know a lot of you folks have medical issues and body issues. And when you hear what he did to himself using his own sound healing techniques, you may want to listen. All right. I'll be back on Sunday night Astro Live. Use your head in order to discern what's real. Your heart to stay up when it's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, Chatlandia. Thank you very much. Here we go. Little bye for nowage. Go on. I'm telling you, the sound healing thing with you and the animals, you can go next level with that stuff. I'm telling you right now. All right. See you Sunday night. Have a great day. Love you all. And, do something different. Bye for now.